Hello, everyone. My name is Jason Boehning. I'm the Building Content Manager at CADLearning, and I have with me today Aaron Wagner, and we're going to talk about some of the new features coming in Revit 2019. So Aaron, I'll let you start out.
All right, thanks, Jason. I'm Aaron Wagner, US CAD Solutions Consultant. Definitely excited for this new version. Definitely, encouraging to kind of keep up with subscriptions and look forward to all the stuff that people at Autodesk have been working on all year. So yeah, I guess just to kind of kick it off, jump into it. One of the top features that's really exciting for me is the new Modernized UI. So, before we'd have just kind of Revit in one window, and some people would try to pull the project browser and things off to another monitor. And that worked okay, but now, finally, in Revit, we can pull the views into separate monitors. So that's really, really exciting.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, that you think about most designers have 2, 3, maybe 4 monitors, and before they've only been able to use one of those to have Revit. And like you said, maybe they could take the project browser properties palette, but that's okay. But yeah, when you can start pulling views and have view windows and then tab different views, yeah, I think that's a huge update, and I'm really excited to see some of these designers jump in there and start to use it to its full extent.
Yeah, absolutely. Finally using the multiple monitors that we've all bugged our bosses to procure for us.
Right.
Now we're actually taking it to the full potential, and it's exciting. We also have tabbed views now, so it'd be similar to most web browsers these days. So if you use Chrome or Internet Explorer, then tabs for your pages is going to be a very familiar feeling when you're doing tabs for the views in Revit. And a really, really great thing with that is you can tile those just as you tiled views before, but now you can tile them on different monitors. You can do all those kinds of things, and you can switch what the kind of front views are. So if you only want to have 3 at a time kind of tiled at once and swap them out, then you can definitely do that. There's a little switching procedure.
Yeah, as I've used this, I felt myself going to that switch windows tool quite a bit, and I'm like, oh no, they're right there, So this one's going to take a little getting used to for me, anyways. But yeah, it's so much easier just to see everything right there at the top of the screen.
Yeah, I agree. Plus, you have the ability to dock the views around the interface, and the docking has gotten a lot more user-friendly now in terms of docking those toolbars and docking those views to different parts of the interface. So that's really, really something I'm particularly really excited about.
That's huge.
Yeah, so that's really exciting. When I first did it, I didn't believe it, but yeah, pulling it off to that other monitor and having the full use of the monitors was really incredible.
Yeah, I agree. And once again, just making it a little bit more user-friendly and more Windows-like, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Now they have the new file version. So before, when we'd upgrade a project, it kind of come up with the dialogue: upgrading a project. If you save, it's going to be forever, known. And I think that's still the case. There was a cancel button, but now what it's going to do is it'll actually show you what software the file was created in or last saved in before you even try to open it. So you don't kind of accidentally open an older version in the new version of Revit and just kind of say, oh gosh, I forgot it was in Revit 2018. So now I have to wait for this, cancel it, and then close Revit 2019, go to 2018, and open it over there. So it kind of gives you a little prompt before, or it's not even a prompt; it's a little indicator there saying what version it was in. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, but nobody ever has any issues with that, though, right?
No, never.
Yeah, no, that'll be very useful for sure.
And now we can show levels in 3D. So instead of just kind of having a work plane while we're working, being able to actually show the levels, it's kind of like, in Navisworks, you can see the levels at certain angles and things like that. With Revit, they've kind of taken it a step further where you can see the datum outlines in your 3D views. So then when you print the views, you can see the levels right there. So that's really incredible.
Yeah, I think that once again, just kind of a new update that we're not used to seeing, those levels in your 3D view, and I think it's great. It's like I said, tells the story a little bit better. You can see just, yeah, I think we're visual people, and it just adds another visual aspect to the 3D model.
And then we have the projection modes for the 3D views, which, before, when you created a perspective view, you could only tell it you wanted it to be isometric instead of perspective when you first created. Now, via the view cube, you can actually set it to perspective or orthographic, kind of right there on the fly after the fact. Instead of just kind of being stuck in one and then having to recreate the views, I think it's incredible to just be able to swap, as we're working.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it could cut down on the number of views that you need. And like I said, you can just switch back and forth and not have to recreate views. And so, yeah, I think this will be very useful.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. I didn't think about cutting down the views, but that'll definitely be helpful too. And then now they added the ability to uncrop 3D perspective views. So before, 3D views were kind of stuck and hardwired to what they are, but now they've added the ability to actually uncrop those 3D perspective views. So that's pretty exciting. We have a little bit more leverage on controlling those extents. Being able to switch between orthographic and perspective, it seems like Autodesk is really wanting us to kind of enhance how we look and view these 3D views instead of them being kind of static things. I don't know what your opinion is on that, or even your experience with being able to uncrop the 3D perspective views, but it seems like a interesting feature for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think visualization has been a huge thing over the past couple of years, and to have more of that inside of Revit, I think is useful. And so now that you can pull a window off to a second monitor and then uncrop it and then expand it on an entire screen, I think I think that's really cool. So it blows up these models on our screens, and we can walk around and see things a little better. So I like it.
Yeah, that's super cool.
So just continuing on with some of these core updates, and Aaron just gave us an overview of some great features, and a lot of these came from Revit users submitting Revit ideas, and Autodesk took those into account. And I think a long-standing one was the ability to have multiple fill patterns in a material. And so the way Autodesk handled that is with a foreground pattern and a background pattern. And so, for example, in a material, we're used to having one pattern. Well, now we can have two. And I think an example is like, for example, with ceilings and the ceiling tiles, you may have different materials, but you still have just that one model, maybe a 2x2 model pattern, and you need to distinguish between the different materials. Well, now you can do that with the background fill pattern. And so you can apply a drafting pattern to distinguish those materials. So I think that'll be very helpful. And Aaron, you ever have any issues with needing multiple fill patterns for a material?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it always requires like a workaround or putting a filled region over the top of it. But yeah, and I really like your example of the ceiling. I think, I'm really excited to see how people leverage that. I think a lot of people are going to be excited about, not being stuck with one representation of the material, but being able to kind of add and distinguish it a little bit more apart from, the relative materials. Yeah, it's exciting.
Sure. Yeah, I think that'll be used quite a bit. Also, when you're talking about view filters, we've been able to add and conditions. So you basically, in the past, you've had three little sections where you can add three conditions, but it's all and. Well, now they've added or conditions. So I think that's helpful because I've seen some pretty complex view filters, and being able to add and as well as or conditions, I think that will be very helpful.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. It was always kind of frustrating. It's like, okay, it's always and, so that means they need to make a new filter, just kind of rethink about how I'm approaching this. But now they've kind of taken that requirement away. So it's really good.
Yeah, definitely. And now I guess a couple more small ones, but you now have the ability to rename views by doing a slow double click in the project browser. So once again, just kind of like you're working in Windows, like a Windows File Explorer. That's how we're used to doing it. So now we have the ability to do that in the project browser. Mm-hmm. And another little update that I don't know. I kind of think it's funny, but it's these little updates that can save us a ton of time, in my opinion. But with the I'm sure you're familiar, Aaron, with when you rename a level or a view, you get that little message, and it's like, would you also like to rename the corresponding levels and views?
Right.
And I'm sure you've seen that all the time, right, Aaron?
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a frequent thing. It's sometimes annoying, sometimes helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. So now in 2019, they added a little option in there that says, do not show again. And so you can select that. But I think you have to be careful here, because I think some people will be excited to see this, but maybe they'll click the wrong option and then it's not there anymore. And so you just got to be careful. But a couple things there. If you do select do not show this again, whatever option you select is what's going to be used in the future. And then if you want to change it, you're going to have to go into the INI file and you can remove that option and it'll pop up again. So
wow.
I think it'll be a big time saver, but just make sure you have your right option locked in there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You might have a novice user that's not aware that the views are also changing names. Yeah, so I guess it's a double-edged sword in that respect. Yeah. Exciting, but also, yeah, I like your word of caution there. Definitely agree.
Cool. And then also speaking about warnings, so when you delete a level, so in the past it would say you're also going to delete these views that are associated with this level. Well, now you'll also get a warning that says these elements will be removed along with the level. And so I think that's helpful because, yeah, I mean, what if you delete a level? You ever had that? Somebody deletes a level just wanting to get rid of it and wipes out a ton of your model?
Right. It was always a mystery. You just kind of delete a level, you're not sure what's hosted by it, but you just kind of cross your fingers and hope for the best, and then you have to go back through the model and QC and see what's changed. If you have a team, then you can review what's changed in the versions, but I mean, it's still not an easy process. So at least now it tells you, so that's very helpful. Yeah,
definitely. And then last, I guess, core update that I'll cover is dealing with text. And so we've always been able to align text horizontally, or there's been a horizontal alignment. Well, now there's a vertical text alignment. And so just a little more control over those text nodes.
Yeah, that'd be good. Anything more that they can make it more Windows-like or make it where, people can format it the way they need it, I think is definitely a good thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So, also with 2019, and this is one that I'm particularly excited about, is how the Revit cloud work sharing works. So if you're a user of Collaboration for Revit and BIM 360 team, that's going to be changing for a little bit, but it's all for the better, I think, long term, especially if you're also a BIM 360 docs user. Now when you host your models using Collaboration for Revit, they'll actually give you the option to actually, I don't even think it's an option. When you host your Collaboration for Revit models or host your models through Collaboration for Revit, they now go to document management. And so, you can do your version control, your markups, your higher level permissions and things like that. So that's definitely exciting, seeing not just, how the products are coming together and becoming more integrated, but all of the cloud services and those built on Forge services kind of coming together is really, really exciting, watching that integration. Are you a C4R or a Docs user, Jason?
Yes, I'm a big fan of C4R, and I have Docs. I don't use it a ton, but I will say this, I do think it is more user-friendly than Teams, especially from the setup side. And so I know with Teams, it took me a while to get, or to figure out, okay, the hub and like the hub roles, and then the project and the project roles, and like I have to go back and look at my notes just to be able to understand everything. But with Docs, it's much more straightforward, and I'm definitely looking forward to the new BIM 360 platform, and I'm glad that Revit or C4R models will go directly to Docs.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting, and in Docs you can set up permissions, based on email addresses, user roles, or their participation in the project, or their company name. So, and you can set those permissions in various subfolders. So it's not just the high trust environment. Once you're in the project, you're open to everything in the project. You can really start to kind of organize where people are working and where their effort is. So really excited about that integration. Now they've pulled out some features from previous versions now in 2019. Some of them are a little bit newer to the Autodesk wheelhouse, and some are a bit older. But yeah, so some of the things that are not available, one that I don't have much experience at all is exporting the building sites to ADSK format files. So that's no longer available in 2019. Then they've also taken away the ability to publish to Autodesk Buzzsaw. Buzzsaw last year had the end of life, brought to it because of what's going on with BIM 360, how that's evolving and maturing, and it's kind of, Buzzsaw doesn't really fit anymore for these new solutions, and so they've kind of removed that ability. The suite workflows is gone. So if you're a Revit 3ds Max switcher, for example, those are gone. But again, it's kind of focusing towards what we're doing with all the cloud services and those integrations, and just kind of paving the way for that, and trying to make it the best use for everybody and make sure that our workflows are consistent. And then the last one that's not available is Communicator. So if you're a C4R user, Communicator is going to go away, and I think that is a push to kind of get all of the dialogue to be in the cloud services. So in this case, document management, all of those conversations are being captured there instead of having one in Revit, one on the cloud. I used Communicator when I first started collaboration for Revit, and it was fantastic. It was really helpful. But then over time, I just kind of used it less and less. And I think that might be the case for a lot of people too. So maybe they just kind of felt that it was more relevant to focus more of the attention to the dialogue online. But I don't know if you have any experience and kind of what your feeling is on some of those extractions they've made out of this release.
Yeah, I think I kind of like when they remove stuff that's not used anymore, as opposed to just like leaving it around, letting it sit around in the program. Yeah. And I think there are some better workflows for some of these things. I guess I was a little surprised that Communicator was being removed, but like you said, it's probably better if we, what am I trying to say? Just cut down on the number of options. Sometimes it seems like there's so many different options to communicate through on a project, and so maybe if there's less options, that would be better. But I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I don't. Well, I'm curious to see what the masses say about it. If they're upset or they want it back, or if they're okay with it. But yeah, as far as the other things, when there's a better way to do it, I like when they remove it from the program.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, definitely interesting to see the reaction to some of those things they pulled away. But yeah, definitely agree with you.
All right, so now we'll jump into some of the discipline-specific updates, and I'll start with the, architecture-specific. And really, I know some of the ones we've discussed already may be a little more architecture-specific than other disciplines, but as far as like what I would call architecture-specific, there's really just one, and that's the ability to, the ability to split railings. And so you can now split railings when you're not in sketch mode. So you've been able to in the past, but you have to go into sketch mode. Now you can just zoom into a railing, use the split element tool, and split your railing. And as far as architecture specific, that's about it.
Yeah, but I mean that's a huge time saver. Instead of kind of copying in place, editing one, deleting half of it, and editing the other, deleting half of it. At least now you can just kind of do your work, split it, and move on with your day. So that's cool. All right, and another discipline-specific one would be what they've done with the structural tools. So if you've watched Revit over the years kind of evolve, initially, the structural tools in particular, and the MEP tools to a certain degree too, were a little bit limited in terms of how they performed, what the appearances were, how the the systems interacted, and what the analysis tools were done with that. But like I said, if you've been watching Revit over the years, you can see that they've really put a lot of work into that. And in this release, I think they're addressing one of the biggest heartaches in terms of steel fabrication and even steel detailing and steel engineering that I've witnessed and heard about in my career. And that's just the ability to have a bit more of what you can do with your steel connections. If you are an advanced steel user, now you can transfer that into Revit natively instead of having to kind of export it and figure out a way to get it into your model for clash detection. They've added a lot of things to just kind of help the fabrication story along with actually using better elements, better objects, things that an engineer or a fabricator would want to pull from their standard library, their catalogs, pull it off the shelf, put it in their model, that before has been a bit of a challenge. So they've put a lot of effort into enhancing that and making it a lot more useful and a lot more applicable. So we don't have just structural clash models, it's actually a structural design model and structural fabrication model all in one.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, just like you said, if you've been paying attention to what Autodesk has been doing, they're starting to tailor Revit a little bit more for the construction industry as well. And so it's not just for designers, but we need actual structural connections and some more detailing around those steel elements. And so, yeah, I think they've added a ton of tools in there. And so, yeah, I'm curious to see how those get adopted and used in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's even to the point that now there's actually a steel tab in Revit 2019. So it has its own tab. That's how important it is.
Yeah. Cool. Well, as far as the MEP side, I think just kind of continuing along those lines, there's some updates to the MEP fabrication tools, just because, just like Aaron said, trying to get these models a little more detailed to where the fabricators can use them. So from designers to fabricators and the contractors and subcontractors and so on. So a couple updates there. And then also on the design side, some really cool enhancements that I like in terms of helping with calculations. And so one of those is the ability to add hydraulic separators into hydronic piping networks. And so this is helpful because you can now create primary, secondary, and tertiary loops in your hydronic piping systems. Wow. And so what this does is just provide more accurate calculations in terms of flow and pressure drop inside these piping systems. And so, for example, let me just continue on, add one more thing on that before I jump into calculations. But there's also conditions where you have parallel pumps. And so you may have 3 pumps on a primary network, and only 2 of those are duty pumps, your primary pumps, and then one of them's on standby. Well, now with 2019, you can create mechanical equipment sets, and you can specify that in this 3 pump set that only 2 of them are duty pumps and one of them is on standby. So that, combined with the ability to add these hydraulic separators, you can create primary and secondary loops with their own pumps, and basically the loops will aggregate the flow and the pressure drop onto the pumps in that loop and just provide more accurate calculations, as opposed to in the past where you just have all the pumps in the system and it really doesn't know what to do. So I'm excited about that, being a mechanical guy. And so do you see the need for that, Aaron?
Yeah, so before, I think there was a lot of workarounds and ways to kind of get Revit to at least just show the elements on the drawings or in our coordination models and things like that. But now the ability to fine tune and actually specify it without having to create extra systems that don't actually connect, but we need it there for certain calculations and all that. That's incredibly helpful. That's great.
Definitely. Yeah, like I said, the workarounds, just reducing workarounds, and I think a lot of people are frustrated at times with just all the workarounds they have to do. And so it's nice to see Autodesk stepping in and just reducing the number of workarounds.
Yeah.
So the last thing that I'll add here as far as MEP updates And so it deals with systems. And so previously, when you would select a system or pre-select it, you tab to select that system, a bounding box would appear around all of the elements in the system. Well, now you're going to see a dashed line on the ductwork and the piping in the system. And so I think it's helpful because a lot of times when these systems, you have components in the system spread out throughout the building model. Well, when you pre-select it, the bounding box is around everything. And so it's like, well, what's in the system, right? But now when it puts this dashed line in the ductwork and the piping, it better identifies what's in the system before you select it.
That's great, because yeah, like you said, I mean, it's if all these systems are kind of woven into each other and kind of seeing, okay, what's in this bounding box now? It's very easy to kind of pinpoint that with this new appearance. That's great.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, that's all we have. So I hope you learned something new, and I hope you go check out Revit 2019.
Absolutely. Hope you have fun with it, and yeah, thank you for your time.